right, we're going. So we are doing a Q&A today, guys, and the Q&A is based on all the questions that you've been sending me the last few weeks. Questions about psychology, questions about persuasion, questions about business. I've got all sorts of different questions here. Questions on, I'm just reading them right now, loneliness as a business owner when you're the ambitious one in the family. Questions about how do you increase your verbal IQ to speak more like Andrew Tate and speak better and speak with confidence and all these things, and how do you be more persuasive like that? Questions on fake gurus as well. You know, I've been scanning I haven't read all the questions, but I've been scanning my eye across a lot of these questions, and I was thinking to myself, damn, aren't these like really in depth and really detailed? And I think that kind of, you know, shows me what type of great audience that I've got here, like great community. Everyone seems to be really smart and everyone seems to be switched on, the type of people that send comments or send DMs or send me emails with these questions on, right? And then another part of it as well, I was reading through some of the questions and they were asking me, like, listen to this one. Entrepreneurship is lonely. I feel like trying to run a business is mentally taxing, particularly when you don't have supportive parents or friends. How do you deal with this and how can you persuade them to better support you? I read that question and like straight away, I got like sucked into the past because I felt like I've definitely been there as well. And it's a horrible feeling. And so let's just start with that one. Entrepreneurship is lonely. Absolutely, 100% it is. If you are getting into entrepreneurship, you have not asked for an easy life at all, to be honest with you. And it's this vicious cycle I found at the start where you are trying to achieve goals and hit a vision which nobody else, your friends or your family, can't see. And if they could see it, they would support you more. But because you haven't got any evidence of that vision working, or, you know, the way you want to drive forward, because you haven't got any sort of, things you can show them to tell them that this is working, they don't really support you and they don't believe in you. And weirdly enough, when you actually start to achieve those things, that's when you'll get the support, when you can show them that this thing is working. And it's a sad state of affairs, honestly, being an entrepreneur. I remember I went through this stage when, this is a good few years ago now, I was insanely lonely in my business. I felt like no one could understand me. I tell my girlfriend at the time, she would kind of understand some of the issues that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, like business issues. But like, other than that, no one really gave a damn. People would roll their eyes and be like, Rob's doing one of those business things again. He's doing one of those side hustles again, you know, that it's kind of like they rolled their eyes almost like it was a hobby. But to me, I was trying to craft a way to help myself get out, right? But no one could see that. And I remember distinctly when I started to have some wins, and this is super interesting, this is psychology right here. When I started to have some wins, I would post a few on my personal Facebook. And I wasn't doing it as to be like, look at me, but I was doing it because I was like proud of the accomplishments. And I remember posting a few financial wins that I had on my personal Facebook. And you wanted to see the amount of people who didn't give a shit about me start reaching out to me and asking me what I was doing, how I was making money, how I could help them, right? All these selfish questions like how much was I making and things like this. And it made me truly reflect on the fact that people only like winners. They don't like you and they're not interested in you when you're in the trenches, basically, which is where, funnily enough, you spend most of your time. So you're in the trenches most of the time, building up these skills to try and build this business. And you won't get any support or anything during that time. But when you get a few wins under your belt, then suddenly everyone's like, oh, how did you do that? I've always supported you. I've always been interested in you. And I found this as well. So I truly appreciate this comment. And you've put, how do you deal with this and can you persuade them? So first of all, how do you deal with this? Well, know that humans are like this. And I think it actually goes back to evolutionary psychology, and that in evolutionary psychology, humans tend to gravitate towards people who have status. And the red pill world has taken this a little bit out of context because they just talk about high status men versus women, right? But really, high status men also draws the attraction, not, romantic attraction, but the attraction, friendship, companionship, leeches of other men as well. And so really you have to understand that us as humans look to associate ourselves with people who have higher status than us. And higher status could be a person who has the ability to take on more resources, to acquire more resources, which is what I was accidentally demonstrating through those Facebook posts, right? I was just putting it up to talk about my accomplishments because I was proud of them. That was what ended up happening. But I'm not trying to jib you off with this answer. What I will give you is a little tip that you can use. It's a persuasion tactic to get support from people. And I didn't know this back then, but I do know this now. Generally, people will act in a way which their identity aligns with. So what do I mean by that? If you ask a person if they are a really hard worker, right? And say you're an employer, and you ask one of your employees, are you a really hard worker? And they say yes, then for the rest of the day, they will act like a hard worker, regardless of whether they are or not. Because what they've done is they've aligned their behavior with the identity that they now believe. So to put this into context of persuasion, what you could do if you're really struggling with this is ask your family and friends, and this is a sales technique, I've seen Grant Cardone use this as well, is say, hey, do you support me? Are you wanting me to win? Or whatever you want to say in your own words, but as long as it sort of conveys something like that. And then when they say, yeah, of course, because every human being is going to say, yes, of course, then you can ask them, hey, this is what I need you to do for me. Would you be able to do A, B, and C just because, you want me to win? And that way we both win because you're rooting for me as well. That's how you get compliance from someone. If you feel they're not being very supportive to you as well. So you give them the identity that they're a supportive person, and then afterwards you ask them to give you what you need, which might be just some reassurance or some recognition. Hey, would you, if it's your partner, hey, would you mind not, telling me to do the pots 3 times a day or whatnot? You know what I mean? And that's called the commitment and consistency bias. So they've got to be consistent with the previous identity that you've given to them, and then they've got to commit and make repeated commitments to that identity basically, and they do the commitments via actions. So that was a little bit complex me explaining that, but that is a very, very effective persuasion technique, and that's how you can use something to try and get some support from your family and friends. But I feel you, man. It's a tough situation. It's a really tough situation, and it's one that unfortunately I'm too familiar with as well. Second question. How do you speak better and learn Andrew Tate's high verbal IQ? It's interesting that you've used Andrew Tate there, because Andrew Tate isn't the only one with high verbal IQ. There's other influencers as well. He may be the most controversial one, but there's other influencers. Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Alex Hormozi, Liver King, right? These guys, I've just picked those random guys, all have high verbal IQ in different areas. Alex Hormozi is very good at breaking complex subjects down. Andrew Tate's very good at flipping scripts and freestyling and persuading on the fly. Liver King's very good at empathizing and commanding a room with his presence, right? All these people have high verbal IQ. If you look at Muhammad Ali, he had actually quite a low IQ when he got his test scores through being drafted for the war, but then his verbal IQ is friggin', to the moon, right? So there's a difference between actual IQ and verbal IQ. I just wanted to get that bit out of the way because people think they're linked. You can have a low IQ but also a high verbal IQ. What I would say is how to speak better and learn Andrew Tate's verbal IQ. Most of it comes with practice. If you break down into scientific terms, into psychology terms, what actually high verbal IQ is, you will find that it's verbal fluidity, verbal fluency, and verbal recall. What do each of these mean? Verbal fluidity is the ability to speak without saying ums, like things that I do all the time. I'm not too bad at it. I'm not as bad as I used to be, but it's still there a little bit. Verbal, I've just done it then, right? Verbal fluency is the ability to draw from a big vocabulary. You can improve this by reading a lot more. Highlighting words while you're reading on your Kindle or whatnot, and then Googling the word if you don't know what it means. That improves your vocabulary. Keep doing that. After a while, you'll find that your vocabulary gets better and better and better, which allows you to be able to describe more and draw more descriptions from other areas. Do you see how that works? Right. Next one is verbal recall. Verbal recall is the ability to stare at a piece of information, to memorize what it says, and then to sum up that information very quickly. News anchors and news reporters are very, very good at verbal recall. They can look at a screen and then parrot it exactly back to the audience of exactly what they need to know. How do you get better at each of these three things? Through practice, through reading books, through just using your ability to talk. Unfortunately, in 2024, because of the events of the world the last few years, people are very introverted now and people like to stay in their houses. And because of this, they miss out on a lot of well-needed sort of social interaction. Because they miss out on social interaction, they end up not practicing the skill of speaking, which can be very, very difficult to overcome. So first of all, rule is get yourself out of the house, call your friends, have the audacity to speak to the cashier next time you go to, I don't know, some sort of shop or whatnot. Start a conversation with them. Learn to practice that skill, and it's like a muscle. At the moment, it's tiny for you, and you need to try to put it under resistance like you would going to the gym. Also, you can just practice and speak into your camera. You know, I am, a million miles away from the best speaker ever, but I'm also a million miles away from the type of speaker I was 300 videos ago on my YouTube channel, okay? So one thing that you definitely can do is just think about a subject that you want to speak about, get your phone camera out, record yourself for 5 to 10 minutes and speak into the camera on that subject, trying to just freestyle on that subject with whatever comes to your head. This is called free association. And if you can do that, record yourself, watch it back, do it the next day, record yourself, watch it back. You do that for a month straight, you will be a much better communicator, even in just a month. So then that tackles the first part of the question, which is how to speak better and learn Andrew Tate's verbal IQ. But it doesn't tackle the part about how to persuade more. Educate yourself on how persuasive people speak. So I kind of do this on this channel alone, but if you think about like how they speak, the conviction they speak in as well. So if I was to say to you, this mouse here, it's a pretty good mouse. It was quite expensive when I got it, but it was totally worth it. Am I convincing you that you need to go and buy this mouse as well? But if I say to you, this mouse right here has saved me so much time, you wouldn't believe it. It's super easy to click, seems to have an expensive price tag, but the hours it saved me in productivity are hours that I'll never get back, right? So just something like that is so much more persuasive, saying it with absolute conviction and belief in my voice. But it's very hard to put on. So what I would say is practice speaking sentences. Try to make one sentence as boring as possible. You can pick out anything. I've got a little pen here, right? I can say that this pen is, it's a pretty good pen, but it's, it helps me write. And then another time I can say this is the best pen ever. It's even, I don't know if you can see it, it's got my name engraved on it right there. And I've used this pen for years and it just doesn't run out of ink. My handwriting's so much easier. I find it so much easier to take notes and fly through the day because I know that whatever I'm gonna write during the day is going to turn to gold, right? Just completely made this up, but you hear how one's spoken with conviction and the other one's spoken very boring. If you can create that contrast there and just practice each of those different things, you'll be in a much better place, right? So what I would say to sum that answer up is practice in whatever social context you can, even if you have to film yourself on the camera, and then also practice speaking with conviction. And then do it to people and see how they respond to you differently. We've got another question here, some angst, AGNST, who says, Iman Gadzhi shut his original SMMA company down once he was making enough cash through selling courses. He has more secrets than people think. And so I think my team have added on a question there saying, why do you think this is? So it's interesting, right? Isn't it? Because here's what I'll tell you. Selling courses is an easy way to make money. not only is selling courses an easy way to make money, but as well, it's very low cost. And so what you'll find is that people will often have tiny businesses and they won't have reached much revenue, and then they will have scaled with the course which they are now teaching everyone about how they made that business successful, when really the course selling part of the business absolutely dwarfs the actual business, right? And I've seen this again and again and again. And at least I would say in Iman Gadzhi's case, he actually did have an agency. Whereas I've seen a lot of the other big players, and you will know them as well, some of these other big players, they didn't even have a business to start out with. They just jumped right from basically not doing anything to then selling a course on how they have created money when they have never really created money. They've only created money through selling the course. And unfortunately, I've seen this again and again and again. And it's a sad state of affairs, to be honest with you. And it's a sad state of affairs for two reasons. One is the people who follow these guys, and some of these guys have a lot of followers. Some of these guys have plus 1 million, right? They have a lot of followers, and people are following these guys who don't know what they're talking about, basically. They have either copied somebody else's course and now they're selling it. They have made the information up, or they've kind of heard through the grapevine that they know what to do. They talk about niche and things like this, but they've never really done it themselves. And that's just a sad state of affairs. That's why it's sad one. Number two is, as a business owner, you want to try and take in as much experience as possible of the real world. And you will only do this by walking the path yourself. And people just skip right to earning money, because money is a very attractive thing to do, right? It's great to earn money. But the problem is that if you're earning money over, you should never take earning money over experience, because experience will end up getting you more money in the long run. So for instance, I helped people with careers first. I helped them with CVs and then resumes. For you American folks out there, I was helping people by building them a resume and CV and selling them on that to future employers. And then I was helping people with interview coaching, and then I moved on to more of type of career coaching. And I ended up helping a person who was an entrepreneur for a little while, who was trying to get back into the job world. And I was just having a conversation while I was building their CV for them and taking notes about what they need in it and what sort of experience they've had. And they were basically asking me how my business was going. And I was like, oh, I've booked 30 calls this week, very, very busy. And they were like, how are you doing that? And that's where it came into the idea that I should help people. And you've seen this as a previous business if you followed me for long enough. That's where it came into the idea that I should actually help people build out their own calendars and book more appointments as well. So then I did that for a while, and then I've sold automation, software, affiliates. I am desperately trying to get as much experience as possible. And now I work with 7 to 9 figure companies. I help them with marketing, persuasion, behavioral science, and things like this. And this has all been crafted through experience, right? And so most people jump straight to selling a course. How can I make as much money as possible? But they forget life and business is actually long. And when it's long like that, you end up essentially in this situation where you either reach a stage that you've never dealt with before because you haven't got the experience and you start failing, or B, the money frigging runs out because you haven't learned to adapt ever, right? Which are two important skills, experience and adaptability. And you really, need to be concentrating on the grind when it comes to actually building your business, right? Rather than like, oh, I need to just get the outcome. Concentrate on the process, the grind, right? That's more important. That teaches the lessons. That's where the fun happens as well. So it's a tough situation, but yes, even some of the big names, I might delete this out, the Q&A later, because I don't want to say too much. I know some of the big names who you will be surprised of, who just haven't done the backstory of what they've led everyone to believe. It's tough, man. It's tough. Let's get the next question. Andrew Tate was very open about his manipulation techniques years before he actually became big online. How does this affect his credibility and influence? It's very interesting. So persuasion is very, very interesting. So if a person tells you exactly what sort of persuasion techniques they're doing, they can become less effective. So in Andrew Tate's case, he talked about all these manipulation techniques, his persuasion techniques years before, and then he did them years later. So probably people hadn't actually realized what he was doing because that audience was very different from his current audience. Does that make sense? But secondly as well, you know, I use bits of influence and persuasion in my video titles, and if you look on my YouTube page, I'll show you in just a second. I use bits of influence and persuasion there. But for me, because I teach the subject, that actually gives me credibility and presents me as an authority as well. And it presents me as an authority because people are like, this guy actually knows a lot about it. So when I talk about persuasion and explain the tactics and things, people see me as actually more authentic. At least that's what I think anyway. That's what I get from the comments, because these comments are like really tip-top detailed comments. So people see me as more authentic because they're like, oh, actually, he's exposing all the other gurus and things like this. So I think, like, if you look at Andrew Tate's situation, he has said things so far in the past. He also says a lot of shit as well, basically. And he says things with absolute conviction, and maybe he can override that in the people who've already seen the content where he's admitting to all the persuasion techniques. But that's not to say that using persuasion can instantly become ineffective, because like I was saying, I use persuasion as well, but you know, companies, businesses still reach out to me to help them with their marketing and their persuasion. They don't think, oh, this Rob guy is a manipulative guy. They think, oh, actually that's really authentic because he's just exposed that guy. You see what I mean? It's kind of a situation which is very nuanced, and so is everything with psychology and persuasion as well. Nothing is quite black and white, and this is why this video most likely won't do very well on social media as well, because I speak about very nuanced things. I don't just speak about the 7 ways to create wealth. I'm just like, this is what works, this is what doesn't, this is why it doesn't work, and this is what you should be trying. Make sense? How do you get your first few clients using persuasion? Great question, man. So in all these courses that everyone's releasing at the moment, you will find that most of these courses are about volume, mass marketing to people either via Facebook ads or, you know, emails or DMs and things like this. And all of those things are effective. But what I would say is often missed is in-person, face-to-face. And I demonstrated this. I put it on a video on my channel last year, and I took it down eventually, just because I had some people's faces in it I shouldn't have had in it, basically. But I put a video on my channel of where I was going to close clients, and I was showing you exactly what I did. And so I walked into a restaurant. Let's ask you guys, knowing what you know about the persuasion principles I talk about, my objective was to close restaurant owners for basically digital marketing. How do you think I approached these guys? What would have been the best way, now knowing what you know about persuasion, which you would have seen in all my other videos? I'll give you 5 seconds and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay. Okay, right. So if you think about the law of reciprocity and the art of reciprocity, and what reciprocity is, it's a persuasion principle. And the persuasion is that you do favors for someone and they then feel the need to do a favor back for you. So if I go and, you know, go to the bar with you, who's watching this video right now, and I buy you a beer, put it down in front of you, buy myself one as well, the next time we've both got empty drinks, you will think that you want to buy me a beer next. You think that's how we get into rounds, right? Because then you will think, well, he bought me a beer last time, so now it's my turn. But basically, that is reciprocity, just on a bit of a smaller scale, a bit more of an obvious scale. Reciprocity works all the time. You can give somebody a compliment and they will reciprocate in some sort of way. You can give somebody something, they will reciprocate. So how do you think I would be able to sign restaurant owners up to a digital marketing service? Restaurant owners are notoriously busy. They've constantly got complaints and friggin' a million different fires to put out coming out their ears, right? They're running around. It's very hard to get them to sit down. How do you get restaurant owners to sit down? Well, you use reciprocity. And how do you do that? You walk into the restaurant, you order a meal, and then once you order a meal, you pay for the meal, okay? You've eaten, you pay for the meal, and you say to the person who's taking the money from you, you know what, this was an amazing meal. Is the restaurant manager about? Okay, restaurant owner, whatever. And then they come over to the table and they say to you, you can give them a tip as well. It works even better if you give them a tip. They come over to the table and then they say to you, oh, you know, I heard you wanted me to come over to the table. You say, you know what, that was an amazing meal. It was, you know, just really great, blah, blah, blah. How long have you guys been open? Start the small chit chat. Now they've got time for you, right? Because you've just been really nice. You've tipped the staff. People who work in the food industry are passionate about it, and you've started the law of reciprocity, which is actually eating in their restaurant. And now they feel like they owe you a favor, and the least they can do is give you a bit of a conversation, right? And then what you say is you strategically move on to digital marketing. You say, hey, so I've just been looking on your social media and I can see that, you know, you're doing this right, but like here is potentially where you're losing clients and customers. You cause a little bit of pain. Suddenly now you've got a meeting booked with this person because you can help them. Do you see how this works, guys? So what I'm saying to you is that everyone online is focusing on send a million emails out, do this automation, do all these social media sites, when truly the best deals are going to come from the local area because humans interact with humans. Humans really need that face-to-face interaction to build up trust. So much easier to do. So I got into a very, very tough industry with business by just doing these little simple techniques there. This is an industry which forces a lot of people out. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to work in the pub and restaurant industry, and I used to be a manager in that industry as well. But I've still never sold business to that industry. But just doing this and using like a persuasion tactic like this, like it instantly helps you. Does that help? So go out, leave your house, go into the local area and work out what sort of service you can offer for the local people. You can get 3 to 5 clients by just doing that, by just going to different places, buying their products, letting the law of reciprocity work its way, and then starting a conversation with them. Most of them won't have you know, the time or the need for your business or the money for it, right? But you will get into better conversations by doing things like that. Okay, so that's how you can use persuasion to close your first few clients. How do you improve focus and productivity? Ooh, this is a good one. So you want to learn to stop procrastinating, improve focus and productivity. Well, first of all, if you think back to school, how many of you used to procrastinate when you were in school? You used to get homework, and then at the end of the Sunday night when the homework's due in on the Monday morning, you would suddenly get this burst of insane productiveness, and you could rattle through some sort of assignment with like intense laser-like focus. I know I certainly used to get that. That's called procrastination. And the only reason why you can overcome that procrastination on the final night is because of the urgency bias. So the urgency bias can divide into a few different things. So urgency is a restriction on time. So you need to urgently do something because the time is running out. Scarcity is a form of urgency, but it's essentially the limit on the number of items. So if something's in scarce, you know, only 2 items left in stock, that is scarcity. Urgency is only another 2 hours to claim your special item. But to be more productive, first of all, you have to know that urgency actually works wonders on your brain, right? It helps you, it kicks you into focus, it keeps you going. So how can you take advantage of this? And here's something that I do, is I set my calendar in quite a strict manner. So for instance, I set everything when I know I need to do it, when I don't have a choice but to do it. So my calendar is stacked, and basically I could have an item in my calendar and then the next item needs to have the previous item done, otherwise the next item doesn't work. Does that make sense? So for instance, I'm just going to give you an easy example here. Let's just say my task next is to create a presentation. Okay, I will create that presentation and have my next task to send this presentation to somebody by 4 p.m. Do you see what I mean? So I'm forced to create that presentation then. That's taking advantage of the urgency bias. So I'll do that first of all. Secondly, is having an area where you can't be distracted. If I have my phone in my room with me, and sometimes I do, sometimes I have to, answer emergency phone calls, right? I notice that my focus is far less, I get far less done. I can literally go hours and not really do anything, right? Other than start to do a little bit of work and then pick my phone up and scroll through Instagram and end up on like friggin' capybara reels or whatnot. And I'll know that I'll do that. So I have to put my phone outside of the room and I have to make sure it's away, and then only I can work great. Secondly, as well, you have the most executive function in the morning when you just get up after a well-rested night. So by executive function, I mean the ability to make decisions, the ability to think logically. This all comes probably 4 or 5 hours at maximum peak in the morning. So what does that mean? So if you picture the ability to make good quality decisions, the graph goes like this, right? It goes down because you start to get more tired, you start to get more wary. It's like being in the gym, right? After 40 minutes or so after doing weights and that, you're starting to get tired, you're starting to fatigue. Same thing happens with your brain as well after being up for a few hours. Starts to get tired, starts to get fatigued. So I strategically organize the hard to difficult to think through tasks, the complex projects right at the start of the day when I'm the freshest. And in this first few hours in the day, I can make the best quality decisions. So I have my tough projects to deal with at the start of the day. If I need to deal with something or read detail of something or analyze something, I do that all in the first few hours of the day. So I find that I start relaxing a little bit into the evening. So it's actually best for me to record videos in the evening because I've started to relax. I'm not as stiff. I've spoken to a few people that day, so I've got a little bit warmed up, right? And then it's much easier to get onto videos like these and be able to talk. However, if I switch those around and record the video in the morning, then I often make loads of mistakes. The video takes longer. I can't really think. I'm just not in the right sort of headspace to be able to do the video. I don't know what it is. It just seems to be the case. So there's a few things that I've talked about. Get the tough tasks done at the start of the day whilst you're fresh and rested. If you think to yourself, I need to get up at 5 a.m. to make sure I've got a first few hours in the morning where I can get all these tasks done. That only works if you're well rested, right? So if you've went to bed at 7, 8 o'clock the night before, then that might work. Then you might be fresh and rested in the morning. But the problem is a lot of people think, you know what, I'm just going to get up really early in the morning, I'm going to box loads of tasks out, but then they've still got decision fatigue because they're not well rested. So first of all, be well rested. Second of all, put the tasks, the hardest tasks for you to do in the morning, the first few hours that you get up. Thirdly as well, if you need to do more speaking, do more things like this, often it's easier to do it later in the day because your decision makings went down a little bit, which means you aren't as rigid. And then fourthly as well, use urgency. Only schedule tasks to be completed when you know that you can put something afterwards, which means that you basically need to keep yourself accountable that that task is going to be completed. So it takes advantage of the cognitive bias urgency. Hope that helps. How can I learn from successful gurus' persuasion techniques without falling for their manipulative tactics? All right, so just watch my videos, right? I don't get sold into any of their programs because I know exactly what they're doing and exactly what's going on. I think developing an awareness around how persuasion happens, and you can do that just through watching, my videos or, watching somebody else who does videos like this. You can, as long as you've got an awareness, you can find that when you become aware, then you have the ability to resist, right? It's still difficult, by the way. We have bonfires in England. I don't know if you guys know from overseas, but we have firework night, bonfire night. And in England, it's the 5th of November. when we have these bonfire nights. And basically we let off loads of fireworks into the sky, and we build lots of logs and have a big burning fire in the middle of a field. Anyway, it's just really nice because you've got all fireworks going around, you've got these giant bonfires, that's what it's called, bonfires, these huge fires, and you just stand around it, and you can go to little events wherever you are in England, you can just stand around a bonfire. It's very cold here in England in November, and you can get really warm, right? And I know everything about all these persuasion things, I know all the studies, right? And me and my fiance, we stood around this fire, and there was another big group next to us as well, and we were just getting nice and warm. We had our hands out like this. And it was just really nice, you know, you can look into the flames and they're all dancing, they're all like bright yellow. It's just really nice and warm, really pretty as well. And then the group next to us started to walk away, and we followed them. We don't even know this group. We followed them like probably for about 20 seconds. And then they went and stood over in a certain place away from the bonfire. And then we went and stood like somewhat near them. And then I turned to my fiance and I was like, I think we just got social proofed into walking away from this. Like, I didn't want to leave the bonfire, did you? And she was like, no. And I was like, but we just psychologically watched the other group walk away and just like followed them like lemmings. And it's so weird. Like, this stuff, even if you're well trained on it, you'll find it's just having an impact on your brain somewhere along the line. And like, that was even a circumstance where I had no intention of leaving the bonfire. She had no intention of leaving the bonfire, but the group next to us, who had a few more people than us, persuaded us just by their presence. Didn't even open the mouth, right? Didn't even call to us, didn't even know us, but we just followed their lead. That's social proof. So it's just interesting. You can educate yourself on it. It's always going to have a little bit of an impact and either make you like somebody when they come across as likable, or, you know, you get social proof like I did when I was walking away from the bonfire. Very, very interesting. But as long as you can learn to recognize these things, you can do that by reading some of the best psychology books. You can read Social Animal, which is a great book by Elliot Aronson, and he talks about all the behavioral studies which have been done. And then Robert Cialdini talks a lot about it as well. I love his books, they're absolutely fantastic. And he's wrote a bunch of books as well. He's like 50 ways to get people to say yes. You can read about, what's another good one? Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who's an FBI negotiator. I think I've actually got a breakdown of that on my channel. Go and have a look for it. Never Split the Difference. Good book that talks a lot about psychology and like how people work as well. So educate yourself on it first, and then things will become a bit easier over time when it comes to trying to analyze other people's stuff as well. Do you think Alex Hormozi uses fake engagement? I'm not sure, you know. I've seen other people mention it in the comments, which is kind of odd, but I've not picked up on it. If he does use fake engagement, it is much less obvious than some of the other influencers. With that said though, I had seen, I'm not sure if this was ages ago, I'm not sure if it was an Instagram reel or maybe a YouTube video, but basically I caught the video as soon as it had been uploaded. It just happened to pop up on my list and I clicked on it, and it already had, in like the first 5 minutes, 500 likes. It must have been a YouTube video. Had something like 500 likes and like loads of comments indicating that they'd watched, you know, talking about the video, indicating that they watched the video all the way through. And I was like, that's a bit suspicious, because YouTube says it only had this video uploaded 5 minutes ago, but the timing of YouTube could have been out as well. So I don't know. I think a lot of these guys use fake engagement and fake bots from what I can see. I can't say 100% for sure for each person, but I can say that like I've looked into a lot of channels now, and now I think about it, I think a lot of them use fake engagement. And then it's a tough situation, right? Because now you've got all these smaller creators, and we've seen them, these growth operators who are all coming out with all this fake engagement on their channel. And they have all this fake engagement on their channel, and probably the reason why they've got this fake engagement is because they feel they need to have this fake engagement to even compete, right? So if you think about like the UFC, I'm a fan of combat sports, I love boxing, the UFC and everything like this. There's rumors that everyone's on steroids, and everybody probably is on steroids, because if you weren't on steroids, you wouldn't be able to compete with the top dogs. So the top dogs all have a combination of skills, talent, and also cheating as well, which nobody seems to talk about. And it's the same in any athletic organization. You'll probably find it's the same in the industries where, you know, either you're a politician or like you're a movie star. You'll find that there's all these little cheating events which have happened, which have helped a particular person rise to the top. So if we take the UFC, for example, you could be insanely skilled, amazingly talented, have worked on your stuff for years and years and years, but realistically, are you going to be able to compete with a person who's also insanely skilled, who's also put in the work and worked really hard to get to where they are, amazingly genetically talented, and then is also on steroids as well? Like, they're going to edge you out because they're on steroids, right? And the same thing would be true for the YouTube game now. So you can be skilled, you can be talented, but sometimes YouTube's just not going to pick you up because you haven't got 300 bot accounts who are all spamming your video with comments and telling the YouTube algorithm that you're a popular person. So a part of me understands the game. Doesn't mean I want to play the game though, because I just think it's a little bit fake, to be honest with you. But I also think this same strategy, doesn't matter what industry you're in or what social media, this same strategy happens in any highly competitive realm. There's always cheating in a highly competitive realm. And it goes back to that status thing I mentioned before, evolutionary psychology, you know, where it's a winner takes all mentality. The person with the high status, you want to be the high status person because then you get more recognition, right? You get more mates, technically, according to evolutionary psychology. So it's a tough game, man. It's a tough game. I think a lot of these big gurus have cheated at some point. I think we're in an age now where, you know, I was talking about the backstories and things before. Like, we've checked out a bunch of these top gurus' backstories, and like, they're just not true. I was watching this guy the other day. He was like, I do 100 grand a month. I used to do 100 grand a month before I started selling courses. And it's like, yeah, well, you didn't, because that's not what your financial statements say. Otherwise, you were laundering money. So either you were laundering money when you were young, doing 100 grand a month, or you just didn't do that. So which one's more likely? Are you a criminal? I don't think you're a criminal. So I think, you know, you'd have been bitten in the ass by now if you did earn that amount of money and laundered it instead and didn't pay taxes on it. Didn't declare it in your financial statements. But what's more likely is you actually didn't do that and you just started selling courses instead. So the problem is like the fake backstories. It's kind of like the steroids. It's a little bit of cheating as well. Coupled with the fact that a bunch of people are taking advantage of the YouTube algorithm and getting themselves pushed. You want to see some of the click-through rates and watch times I've had on my last few videos, like 9% click-through rate, which is really high in the YouTube world. And like 50% of the video watched, just because like the people who are watching the video generally like the content they're watching. But YouTube doesn't push it though, even though that's really high, it doesn't push it. And the reason why it doesn't push it is because it's so highly competitive as well. It works like an auction system. So, you know, there's a lot of things to think about here. I think people do cheat, then people are forced to cheat. And it ends up in this like cycle where people have to continually cheat more and more and more to get more exposure. This person says here, how can you use authority bias in your marketing to make you seem more of an expert? I mean, like, authority bias could be client results. Authority bias as well could be how long you've had your agency open, if that's what you're running, or how long you've had your business open. Serving customers since 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Authority bias could be like, are you regulated by any industry, right? Regulated by the FCA, which is a financial conduct authority in the UK. It's like what banks have to go through, right? But that's authority right there. You know, helped 7,000 people, that's authority. That shows your expertise. You know, if you're selling supplements and things like this supplement has been proven over 10 case studies. This supplement has been tested by the world's leading scientists. Things like that, guys. That's how you can use authority bias in your market. And authority bias is, for those who forgot, is that people look to authority figures to make choices. So they've actually done experiments before where a person will be dressed normally, talking to a group, dressed like me, and then a person will be dressed in a lab coat or like a doctor, and they'll talk to a group. Person who's dressed normally will ask the group to do something, right? And they'll get a certain amount of compliance from the group who follow that action, 30%, 40%. But then the person in the lab coat or dressed as a doctor asks them to do it as well. And the group will follow exactly what the person in the lab coat does. That's authority bias. We look to experts to help us make a decision. So even if you get, and it's dangerous as well, because if you've got a person who's presenting themselves as an authority, presenting themselves as an expert, dressed the part, looks the part, acts the part, right? And they are telling you to do something which isn't in your best interests, it's tough to not listen to that person. Authority bias is very, very powerful stuff. But then again, going back to what you asked there about marketing and using it as your marketing as well, you can do things like this, which helps you, come off as an expert, as long as you use it ethically, right? So as long as the direction that you're trying to get people to go is suited for them. Nate has asked me here saying, when you write on your YouTube bio, businesses hire me instead of I help businesses, does that work as social proof? And the answer is yes. So let's jump over and take a look at my YouTube bio. So this is what I have in my YouTube bio here. Businesses hire me to improve their marketing and psychology. And he's asking if I'm using social proof here. Yes, I am using social proof. So I could write, I help businesses analyze and improve their market and user psychology, but I use specific word in here, which is businesses hire me to analyze and improve their market and user psychology. This bit right here is social proof. And it's kind of, as Nate has pointed out, it's kind of the same as when you say, people always ask me about this. People always ask me about A, people always ask me about B as well. It's social proof in yourself. And I've done that exact same thing there. But here's an important distinction, guys. That is social proof right there. Also, the engagement in all these YouTubers, where they've done all the fake engagement, is also social proof. What's the difference there? The difference is mine is real. Businesses hire me. They do hire me, right? So that's real social proof. And this is where kind of the line is drawn, right? When you're using these persuasion things, you need to be doing it from something which is very true. I can put a Lamborghini behind me now, or go and rent a giant house for a day or whatnot. And that would be very persuasive to some people, but it's not really true. It's not really authentic. Sometimes I do travel away, right? And you see me on really nice beaches and things like that. If you follow me on Instagram, and you've seen me do those things, but I don't live there. I mainly work from this room right here. And it's important as well that when you're trying to be more persuasive, you don't forget about being authentic. And the problem is you forgetting about being authentic is that you actually become less persuasive. We've seen it in some of Iman Gadzhi's videos. I recorded a video the other day actually of Iman Gadzhi where he started the video and he was holding his head in his hands like this. And he was like, I've made some serious mistakes. And then he goes on to talk about his mistakes, right? But the thing is that looked almost like a soap opera. Sure, he talked about his mistakes in it, but the whole holding your head in your hands, there's a certain age you get to where you're like, this is all planned, this is all scripted, right? So it takes the emotion out of it. People stop seeing you as authentic, and it actually has the opposite effect. Then when you've got all these, fake engagement bot comments in your YouTube video as well, that also has the opposite effect. People are like, these comments, they're way too happy and overly praising this person. Do you see what I mean? So I think if you're going to be more persuasive, you focus on being authentic first. People like people who seem to be transparent, who seem to be authentic, who seem to be, can chat to them almost like a friend. People crave authenticity and crave people who are more real. That's why Andrew Tate got big, even though Andrew Tate manipulates a lot of people. But like, he was saying a lot of things which are on people's minds, right? About the struggles men were having with women. That's how, it was a great way to market himself, about how the world felt unfair. He took advantage of that message and then started marketing it back to people. And guess what? None of his followers noticed. It's great marketing. Right. Also very manipulative as well. So here's what I would say is focus on being authentic first. And after that, then see what you can implement in terms of persuasion, but implement it in a way which is actually real, okay? So things you've actually done. If clients have actually said this about you, if you've actually helped this many people, only do that. I've written here, businesses hire me to analyze and improve their marketing using psychology. It's because businesses do hire me. So that's social proof, and it's real social proof. See the difference? Okay, I'm losing my voice a little bit, guys. And I'm not sure if it's because I've just basically talked for an awful long time now. But I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you've got any questions, DM me them, email me them, write them in the comment section. These questions are amazing because they let me talk on a variety of topics as well. So I love them. Keep submitting them, you smart people. Okay, take it easy. See you in the next one, and have a great week.